Hey, welcome in. I'm Rita, and this is the story I'm telling myself. If you've ever felt like you're standing in your own way, you are not alone. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome, everyone. It is Mardi Gras Tuesday. Fat Tuesday is here. And so we're here to celebrate and have a wonderful conversation today with our guest, Mo McKnight Howe. Mo, good morning. How are you? Welcome.
Morning. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you here. Look, you know the drill. If you are joining us for this live recording, please pop into the comments and say hello and greet Mo. I think we're losing our Facebook connection again. Facebook friends, I don't know what's happening to StreamYard and Facebook. They are not liking each other right now, but hopefully our LinkedIn and YouTube folks will get to join us. See, Gary's already here from the UK. Good evening, Gary. So glad that you were able to join us. Thanks for being here today. So, Mo, I want everybody to know a little bit about you, and I love when our guests give their own intro. So, would you introduce yourselves to our listeners and tell them who you are?
Yeah, of course. My name is Mo McKnight Howe, and I own an art gallery here in Louisville, Kentucky called Revelry Gallery that features the work of over 150 artists, all from Kentucky. And we just celebrated our 15-year anniversary. So I'm very proud of my little baby business turning 15 this past year.
That's it, an exciting anniversary. 15, congratulations to you. This is Mo's email address, and that's how she would love to connect with you. So if you want to connect with Mo after you hear this conversation, mo at revelrygallery.com is the best way to reach her. And she is going to talk about this. She mentors artists. So, if some of you are in that space, you're definitely going to want to follow up with her. Mo at revelrygallery.com. And we'll also have that information in the show notes for those of you who can join us. Hello, Tiffany. You're in Siesta Key. What a lovely place to be. I hope the weather is being kind to you. We're supposed to be warm here in Louisville, where Mo and I are this week, but remains to be seen. It's been an interesting week of weather so far, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about belonging and about inclusion and about creating spaces that invite community in with us. So, as an intro to this conversation, Mo, you were sharing with me that you've been very intentional about this, that many people walk through life and they're just looking for belonging. They're always on the, looking outward trying to find it, but you shifted that focus and decided to cultivate those spaces yourself and to create those. And so would you start from the beginning for our listeners and tell us a little bit about how you came to create Revelry Gallery and Boutique and why that became your passion and work?
Yeah, of course. It started 15 years ago. um, as I just said, we celebrate our 15-year anniversary. I was a struggling um, graduate of art school, and a lot of my friends were. We had gone to all these wonderful schools, and I got a wonderful scholarship to University of Louisville for art. And we kind of graduated and were told that we had to work 3 and 4 jobs to be an artist if we wanted to stay here in Louisville, or we had to go to bigger cities and try to make it. And I really loved Louisville. I wanted to stay here. I wanted to stay near my family and my friends. And I was like, no, I want to make a living as an artist here in my hometown. And I was really discouraged by hearing that, like, I couldn't do that. And so I started walking into art galleries around town and was kind of not met with, I had my portfolio and I was so excited. And I just wasn't met with people that could help me. They were kind of like, well, you need to you need to sell at bigger places. You need to go to bigger galleries. You need to have your first gallery show. I'm like, well, how do I have my first gallery show if I can't even get one foot in the door at like my local art galleries? And basically all my friends and I were just showing at bars and coffee shops because those were the only places that would accept young artists' work. And so I was working odd jobs. I was working as a nanny. I was working, all sorts of little, I was a photographer for weddings. I was just doing all these odd jobs and not really doing what I wanted to do, which was be a full-time artist. And I didn't have anyone helping me to get there after college. Um, so my business partner Paula had just graduated with her MBA and was like, "Well, I'm starting this art gallery and it's kind of for up and coming artists." I'm like, "That's exactly what Louisville needs. This is awesome. How do I get in on this project?" And so soon after that, we became business partners in the gallery, and it just opened up my whole world to how many people I found in the same boat as me. So many artists struggling, so many artists saying, "I have to go to New York, I have to get out of here if I want to make it a living." And our whole goal from the beginning was to try to not only give artists kind of their first show and the stepping stone into the art world, but it was also to help them make a living and help them make a check every single month. Like, we were very like, we're a commercial gallery, like we're here to sell art. Um, so that was kind of, the beginning of it. And thank God for Paula, my business partner, who had a lot of business experience and could help me through that and help me through beginning the business.
So part of the story that you and I that brought us to the name of this episode, which is "Do I Belong Here?" is this experience that you had as a young artist. So you had been fed through your college experience, this appreciation of your talent, of your capacity, of your capabilities, and then you walked out into the world and you had a very different experience about that and your sense of belonging in that artist community. Would you add to your story a little bit by talking about those early experiences of walking into galleries and art spaces and how it made you feel?
Yeah, yeah. So I soon realized when I started, doing some research and going to galleries and seeing where I wanted to show, I didn't feel comfortable in art galleries, and I was an artist, like that should be like the most comfortable space for me ever. And I didn't feel comfortable. I was nervous to walk in. I thought, I don't know enough about this kind of art. I don't have enough money to be in here. Um, the art world is weird, like it's very it can be elitist, it can be judgmental, and it didn't for someone that's so not like that and that's not my personality, it was really hard to see myself even wanting to show my work in some of these places because I'm like, if I don't feel comfortable, imagine how like everyday people that aren't, that haven't majored in art and art history like me feel walking into an art gallery. So I kind of saw this duality happening with artists not feeling comfortable or not having a place in um, a lot of these galleries and a lot of these spaces. And also customers, like, people like my friends and family and just people off the street not feeling comfortable in these spaces. So it was both of these things that kind of helped me, when, Paula got me into this business, shape the direction of Revelry. Because I was like, there's a need for this, there's a need for artists to have their first show and be mentored and feel comfortable in art spaces. But there's also this need for everyday people to feel comfortable in these spaces. And that's kind of why we designed the gallery the way we did. And again, I give so much
Wait,
credit
I'm
to
going to pause you.
Paula, who, re-
I'm
oh,
going to pause you before we get into the
go
design.
ahead.
I want to get into the design, but before we get there, I want to hang here a moment in this conversation about "Do I belong here?" Because I think this is somewhat universal, Mo. And I want to say welcome to Sonia. Thanks for joining us from Oxford. So happy to have you with us. And Leslie, you are here with us every week. Thank you so much for being with us again today. this especially for young people coming out of college. I mean, I can remember this sense of intimidation that you have when you're job seeking, when you're trying to find your first place of work, and you have a passion about what you want to do and about your sense of self. But everybody, I think, carries a certain amount of question or doubt into those early experiences. And if you're with us in the comments, let me know. Am I crazy? Was it just me, or did you have that experience too? But this idea of it's a two-part question, I think, Mo, and I'm curious to know your reflection on this. One part of it is, that am I good enough? Are they going to like me? But the other part of it is that question of, do I belong here? And do I want to be the person it seems like I might have to be if I were to choose to be here? Like if you're interviewing in a bank and everybody's in suits and ties and that kind of thing, and you've never been a suit wearing person, you're just like, I don't know, is banking really the right place for me? Do I get to be who I really am? Do I want to be a person in a suit? I mean, was it that kind of feeling you were having?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely, that's the type of feeling I was having. And the more I talked about it to other people, the more I realized I wasn't alone in that feeling, and that a lot of people don't feel comfortable in a lot of spaces. It's not just an art gallery thing. Um, I think we question ourselves a lot, and do we belong here, and how to fit in, and how, to be a part of these spaces when you don't maybe like look the part or feel like you have enough knowledge to be in these spaces. And that, I now I'm older, and I, have a little bit more confidence and whatnot, but I still relate to younger people, and I feel like there's even more of a disconnect now because of the digital world, and because they grew up with phones, where they really don't feel like they belong. And adults too. It's not just limited to people that are graduating from college. It's hard. It's really hard. You just kind of beat yourself up about it, or feel like you have to conform to looking like, the people in that space, or acting like the people in that space, when really what makes, all of us so incredible and human is that we're our diversity and how different we all are. And now, of course, I'm not scared to walk into spaces and I, I think a lot of people do. So I feel like this might be more of a universal thing than just what we're talking about, my certain experience, my exact experience.
Yeah, I think it is a very universal experience. But Gary's on the same page with you. Gary says we belong by being, not doing being together. And that's something that you learn with the wisdom of the years of walking. I think that you don't walk out of college completely understanding. I think there's a lot of signaling that we get as young people of that we have to do the being together. If we can just make ourselves look the right way, or say the right things, or show up in the group in the right way, if we're being in the right way, we'll be accepted. And I think you learn the wisdom that Gary is talking about with age, but you don't always have that in youth. But we all do have this unlimited desire to belong and to show what we can do, and to not be immediately judged and discounted. And as somebody who appreciates art, I can really relate to what you're saying. Hey, King, thanks for joining us. Mo, about walking into certain art spaces, like to go to an intimate gallery show. It took me a long time. Like as a young person, I would have never done that. I've done that now as an older, but I always want to go with a girlfriend. There's something sort of intimidating about walking into an art gallery and knowing that there's things here, pieces I would never be able to buy what's being shown in this show or whatever. Um And there is a certain intimidation that comes with that, but you turned that intimidation, you and your partner, into a fuel and passion for creating something different. So let's walk forward in your story now and to start to talk about the intentionality in what you guys chose to build with Revelry.
Yeah, well, Paula actually had the great idea to paint the walls blue. That was the first thing. She had this favorite teal color blue that was in her grandmother's kitchen, and she was like, "We're not going to have a white wall gallery. We're going to have blue walls." And I was like, "Whoa, okay, this is crazy." So that was kind of the first, and we still have blue walls to this day, by the way, that are grandma's teal. So that was kind of the first, like, okay, we're the anti-white wall gallery. Um, and then, I thought no one, people don't walk into just an art gallery. We need something that is like more universal in the approach. And that's, it was the boutique. So you walk in, it's all handmade items. So everything from jewelry to candles to ceramics. You walk in and it looks like a boutique, but then you look a little closer and you realize, oh, all this stuff isn't made in China or bought at market. This is all handmade things by people in my community. I we put rugs on the floor. Like I got a bunch of, beautiful old, antique rugs and put them all over the floor. All of our fixtures were thrifted. Um, that was by intention. We were trying to make it look almost like a home, like a homey space, and make it warm and inviting. I brought my dog in every day that, greets people. He still, I still have a dog that when you walk in, he greets you. Like it's all about just feeling like you're at home. Like that's kind of like what we tried to create rather than like what you think of as a gallery, which is like stark spaces, white walls. Like instead, it was like, let's make this look like someone's house. And you just like happen to walk in. And then you wander to the back, and there is this beautiful art gallery with nothing but like one single show. So it's kind of two parts. It's a boutique when you walk in, all hung floor to ceiling with art, but also fixtures with, beautiful handmade things everywhere. And then the back is where you kind of discover, oh, what's this? What's this back here? Like you found a little secret, and it's this wonderful art show. And, to this day, we have an art opening every single month because I want an artist to have their first show. I want an artist to have, a show and have to be able to do that. And so we still do that every single month. And so it's two
I
parts.
wanted
It's a
to
boutique
say,
and a gallery, which is why.
I love this
Go ahead.
idea that you guys created this space that with wanting to feel like walking into somebody's home, or almost the antithetical of the traditional, like what you think of when you see in movies of the New York art scene or the Chicago art scene and the galleries that people go in. Um, and Tiffany is a friend to Mo and I both, and a local person. She says she loves coming to Revelry. It feels like such a safe space, and she loves shopping there and checking out the new artists. And so it's not just the intention; it is the experience that brings people back to Revelry over and over and over again. But even beyond cultivating the space, you also cultivated a practice with artists to try to help them move beyond the starving artist side hustle to something that really allows them to step into their profession. Tell our listeners a little bit about how you work with artists at Revelry.
Yeah, work with 150 of them, over 150 of them actually. But I have a wonderful team now. It used to just, be me and like one or two other people. Now I have a wonderful team, but we really help mentor artists. My whole thing about being an artist is you're not going to make it on just having a one art show a year, and you'll be lucky to get one art show a year anywhere. Um, so I'm a very commercial gallery. I think there's lots of different types of galleries and museums, and I'm very upfront with that. I am here to sell artwork. I am here to make sure artists are getting a check every single month, and I will help mentor them through that. So sometimes people will bring in, beautiful paintings and things, and I'll say, why, tell me why I would want to buy that. Tell me why I would want this on my wall. And kind of looking at art through a more commercial lens, which is the opposite of what we're taught in art school. In art school, we're taught about color theory and, composition and art history. We're not taught about how are you going to make a living as an artist. So I, myself and my team really kind of walk people through not only their first art shows and help them write an artist statement, we help them price their work. We also do studio visits and help them come up with collections of work that people are going to want to have in their living room, people are going to want to live with, because that beautiful painting of your grandmother is so beautiful, but why is someone going to want to hang that in their in their bedroom? Like, artists just don't always think about that. So we help them, with everything that they need, from their branding to pricing to subject matter to printing. Any resource we have, we are like an open book for all of our artists, and even people that aren't our artists. People always be like, can I just bend your ear and ask you a question? I am an open book. Like, I don't want to gatekeep the art world, because that was gatekept from me, and I don't want to ever be that person. So yeah, my goal is to get artists a check every month, and I'm really happy to say that a lot of our artists do make a check from us every single month that is enough for them to live on, which was the whole goal of starting Revelry. Is like, how do we make money? How do we get money in artists' pockets? And I'm so happy that, like, I've gotten to see so many artists go from like working 4 jobs to being a full-time artist in their studio.
Well, and you also created a kind of work in residence type program for some of them, right? Where they work in the gallery part
Yes,
time, but you also
everyone.
require them to be creating simultaneously.
Yes, yeah. Everyone that works at Revelry is a working artist, and I only allow them to have up to 25 hours a week in the gallery, because I want them to have studio time as well. And everyone that works for me has work in the gallery. The goal is to have a solo show, which I can say I think now 3 out of 6 of my employees have had their solo show. And then I want them to graduate. Like, I want my employees to eventually graduate to being full-time artists. But yeah, I give them they get a higher percentage for working in the gallery, for selling their artwork, which encourages them to make artwork and continue to make artwork, and not just, be like, oh, well, I just work, in the gallery. It's like, no, I want you to keep creating. I want you to have studio time. I want you to put things on the walls. And when customers come in and ask you, where's your work? You can walk them over and show them your work. So I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud that all of my employees are artists, and that I've gotten to see so many of them graduate onto being full-time artists. And that's what our 15-year anniversary celebration was all about. Was all of my past employees, most of them came back, and we had an art show for all of them, and I got to kind of see where they were, and they're all over the country. They flew in from all over the country, and so many of them are just like making it in the art world, and it's so amazing and rewarding. It's incredibly rewarding, for me, because that's the whole goal.
Well, and it's an important part of the belonging story. We're talking in this episode about intentional cultivation of spaces where you're building communities and belonging. And so, we talked about the approachability, about people like feeling like they could actually be in that space and get to be themselves in the space. But another important piece of and it's not something to apologize about, is the monetary, the commercial part of that. I mean, artists want to make money doing art. And so creating a space and creating a way for them to do that is very important. They have skin in the game. They have a stake in selling what's hanging on the walls, but they also have a stake in creating what is hanging on the walls, right? And so I mean, this is an important part. You got to take that and translate that into your own business, your own spaces. If you are wanting to cultivate community and belonging around you, you have to think about all of these elements. You can have the best policies and practices and culture to work in, but if people are not making if they're not able to monetize that into making a living in a way that they feel is appropriate for them, then they're probably going to have to move on beyond you. And so it's important that we keep these things in. But you didn't stop with just thinking about the monetization for the stakeholders that are these artists inside of your business. You've also thought about that very, very strategically as you think about customers coming into your space. So you had to make it through the COVID times, which were so hard on small businesses and very hard on small businesses in downtown Louisville. And you've continued to grow and emerge on the other side of that. And part of it, that is the strategy that you have around thinking about the customer's experience and customers of all ages. So share a little bit with the listeners about how you think about the customer experience in Revelry.
Yeah, I mean, the customer experience is everything to us. You can ask any of my wonderful employees. I'm like, everyone gets greeted at the door. Every single person needs, you need to talk to them. And that's just number one, because again, I walk into so many stores and galleries and no one talks to you. And it makes me feel like, am I supposed to be here? Am I bothering you for coming into your store? So that's like number one is I'm like, everyone needs a touch point. Everyone needs to be greeted. That's part of feeling like they belong in the space. That's really important to me. And then of course, like, the homey atmosphere, my dog, like the fixtures, like people walk in, they're like, oh, this isn't a normal store. Like I think you kind of see people's gears going when they start to look around. They're like, oh, this isn't like other stores. And I think in the age of, the digital world and the e-com world and everyone's on Amazon buying everything, what sets Revelry apart is that everything in my store you can't buy on Amazon. There's not one thing in my store you can buy on Amazon. You have to actually go to my store, and we do have, a website that you can buy most everything on. But it's about going and seeing the things and touching the things and realizing that everything's handmade and everything has little imperfections or it's not something that is made in China. It's not something that's mass produced. And that is all part of the experience. And it's why, and I see a lot of retailers closing. I see a lot of retailers closing. And everyone says, don't start a retail store nowadays. Don't do a brick and mortar. And I would say, yeah, don't do a brick and mortar, especially if you're just going to go to markets or buy a bunch of stuff in bulk and try to resell it. Because that's what, I mean, 99% of retailers, that's what they're doing. They're going to markets, they're buying things in bulk, and then they're upcharging you. They're buying it for cents on the dollar and then upcharging you. Like that's what retail is. That's dying. That's dying because everyone can just take a picture of that and boop, 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 buy it for cheaper on Amazon. So what sets Revelries apart is you can't do that. These, not only are you supporting people in your community by buying things there, but you're buying things that you can't buy anywhere else. And you're getting this wonderful experience by being greeted by an artist, that made some of these things, and by my dog. And you're discovering things that you have never seen before, that your eyes have never seen before, because they were created by an artist. And I love what I do because I get 80% tourists that come in and they all think Kentucky is bourbon and horses and chicken. And then they walk in and you say, oh, everything in here is made by local artists. And they're like, oh, Kentucky. Okay, Kentucky. Like they're, and you just, again, you kind of see their gears turning like, this is cool. Kentucky is cool. They have artists. Like, and I love being able to like show off that, because like this is where I was born. This is where I was raised. Like, I'm really proud of that. And so to me,
Well,
it's
and a
fun
lot
every
of
day because I
shop
get to like,
a lot of boutique shops that are carrying, one of a kind things, they're a little frightened of children in their space. And you guys have taken almost the opposite because you're trying to cultivate youth loving art at a young age, right? So talk about your kids.
Yeah, so that's another thing with art galleries and stores. Is like people are like, I immediately see the parents like, don't touch anything, don't touch anything. And then kids think, oh my God, this isn't a space for me. This is only for grown-ups. And I'm like a do touch art gallery. I'm like, no, like do touch everything. Like it's okay. And and I want kids to feel like they're part of the art world too. Like, right? I want adults to feel like they belong. I want college students to feel like they belong, kids. I want everyone to feel like they belong here in art spaces. So we have a whole kids cove, and it's all artwork for kids, and it's all very tangible, fun, handmade items, books by local authors, clothing and art that's all for kids. And I can't tell you how many little art collectors I have. Like it's so fun to have kids come in and then say, "This is my favorite store." And they run to the kids cove to pick out like their new little piece of art for their room, and that gives them, like, such a sense of, like, personality too, like, to be like, "I get to pick my own art from my room." It's not just like mom going to Target and, like, throwing something on your wall that you have to stare at. This is something they stare at every single day, and for them to be like, "I picked this. I chose this." That's them developing their own little personalities, their own collections, and so for me, the Kids Cove is super important to what we do because I want kids to know from a very young age that they belong in art spaces. They can be art collectors, they can support artists, and that they can have their work in the gallery too. I mean, our youngest artist, I think, is like, 12 years old. Like, I always tell kids, like, if you ever make stuff, like, let us know. Like, we have artists from 12 years old to, 84 years old. So I want everyone to be included in this space, no matter what age you are.
And you also have items like stickers, things that are very affordable for what kids can purchase, right? So you try to make sure that you are price inclusive as a part of your belonging strategy.
Yes, that's huge. Like, I'm like, especially when artists make, really expensive things, I'm like, this would look really cool as a print. This would look really cool as a sticker. And that way, if like someone can't afford their big, beautiful oil painting, they can buy a $4 sticker of that oil painting. That's like a way to make art accessible for everyone. And a lot of my artists do that. And then they're able to also make a sale every day from that. And those stickers, the sticker and print sales add up. They add up big time.
I love that. I just love that. Gary says, "Do you plan to open other Revelry galleries in other locations?" And I am so with Gary on this of like there needs to be a franchise model or a teaching model or something. Like this is an idea that deserves to go global. Has anybody talked to you about doing that, Mo?
I looked in 20, like of course 2020, at opening in Over the Rhine in Cincinnati. I've looked at other places. It's so hard because artists are they're so close to their work. And so I have spent years of my life developing relationships with artists so that they trust me to carry their work. I don't own any of the artwork in the store. It's basically a big consignment shop. And and they drop off their work, and it's like you would think that they were dropping off their children, to me. Like it is such an emotional thing, and I just, I do think Revelry, I have so many people that come in and they're like, "I wish we had one of these in Portland. I wish we had one of these in Cincinnati." I get people from all over the world saying, "I wish we had a place like this in my town." And some of them will say, "Oh, we have, kind of a place like this," but they also sell a lot of other stuff too, and they kind of mix in the local art. I would love to be able to franchise Revelry and grow it, but it's just such a relationship business. And I wonder how it would work in other cities where I don't have roots, I don't know. And
Right.
also
Well,
I would need a lot
maybe
of
what you need
funding.
to
I would
do
need a lot
is
of money.
maybe what you need to do is you need to build the education portion of this. Like this needs to become a class or multiple classes that get woven into the traditional art school program that really teaches about commercialization because you're probably not the only artist who also has the capacity to run a business like this if they kind of understood the possibility. Tiffany jumped in again and said, mentorship is invaluable. Thanks for taking the time to nurture and inspire artists and to continue their passion and work in the Louisville community. It's an amazing, unique space, and you should be so proud of your 15 years. And I just found out, I recently spoke with Maggie Harlow, who will be a guest in a few weeks. And she said that she brought her art to your space. So it is a small community inside of Louisville at the same time. But I thank you. I want to say thank you, Mo, for sharing this inspiring story. We all have the opportunity to be very intentional, like Mo has been, in the space that we create around us in our work. And that is what I want listeners to take away today. I want you to take away that inspiration to think about those touch points, whether it is the customer or it is your internal employee, whoever it might be. How are you, with very clear intention, thinking about their feeling of belonging and their ability to come and contribute to their fullness in the space around them? And you don't have to be the owner of the business like Mo is to do this. You can do this inside of your own little team and the touch points that you make with the people inside the organization that you're interacting with, as well as the customers that you get to interact with. So we can all be a part of creating that experience where somebody's like, I love being in that space, or I love being connected to that person because this is what they create. And that's the challenge I want to leave with you on this week's episode. Mo, parting words of wisdom you would like to share with our listeners?
Shop local. Shop local. If you care about culture and your community and want to support artists, like, please find these spaces, seek them out, shop local. It's getting harder and harder every single day to be a small business owner. I feel like the world is against us. Everything is just rising. All the costs are rising. So please, if you care about spaces in your community, especially local businesses, I just really encourage you to keep your money in your community and support local businesses right now, because I can tell you right now, it's hard. It's getting harder. So please, if there's anything I can say today, is support local businesses, support local people, support artists.
Yes, keep your dollars in your community. I love that message. It's a really important message because it is hard. We are in different business models, but I feel it in my business model too. It is feeling like a tough space right now. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Mo, this has been so inspiring. I met Mo at a conference, and I just knew when I heard her story that she needed to come to the story I'm telling myself. That if you are telling yourself the story, I don't belong there, that is the signal to you to say, how am I creating the space around me where people are always saying, I can't wait to be in that space because that's where I belong. That is what we want to be up to this week. Thank you so much. Come back again on next Tuesday. Can't wait to have you back with us again. And we'll see you then. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye. Thanks for joining us. If you love this episode, leave us those 5 stars and be sure to share this with a friend. And if you didn't, don't worry about it. See you back here next week.